Welcome to another episode of Working Class. I'm your host, Attorney Ryan. Today we have a very special guest and a personal friend of mine, Brandon Smith. Now, Brandon Smith is an extra special person for a number of reasons. First of all, he protects lives and property, keeping Californians safe as the co-founder and leader of the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program. And he's going to tell you a little bit about what that is. But one thing you need to know about Brandon is he's actually a former firefighter. Well, not a former firefighter. He still helps people now, and we're going to get into that. But he spent years protecting California from wildfires. But one thing that might surprise you is he didn't wear a yellow uniform. He wore an orange uniform. And he did it as part of the California Department of Corrections. That's right. Every year, thousands of inmates in California's prisons suit up, strap on their helmets, and they march into the fiery columns of California's wildfires. It is one of the most grueling, brutal, dangerous jobs a prisoner can have. But thousands of people volunteer to do it all the time. Brandon is here to talk about what motivates someone to make that choice, what they get from it, what their day-to-day life is like, and some of the challenges they face when they get out, because it doesn't get easier. But people like Brandon are doing something to make a difference. So Brandon, thank you so much for being here, man. I've missed you.
I miss you too,
It's
Ryan.
good seeing you, brother.
Good looking out.
Well, let's start with you. I mean, Forestry Fire Recruitment Program. What is it?
All right. First of all, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Yeah.
Really appreciate this, bro. So FFRP is the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program. Mm-hmm. We are a tuition-free nonprofit organization that helps justice-impacted and marginalized people transition into careers within the wildfire and forestry sector.
That's fantastic. Now, you say justice affected. A lot of people don't really know what that means. So what does that mean to you guys?
Well, justice impacted to me means anybody that's been involved or impacted by the criminal justice system. It can be someone who is in jail or in prison. It could also mean, it can also mean their families, their parents, their children, their aunt, right? So anybody who is themselves or has a family member or loved one that's been impacted by being in jail or prison, we call that justice impacted.
Interesting. Now, you yourself are a justice impacted person.
Yes, I am.
Can you tell us what happened?
Right. So in the context of being justice impacted, I was actually the person that was incarcerated in prison.
So you were arrested, you were arraigned, and you were convicted of a felony.
Yes.
Really? And then you went to prison after that.
Yes.
What was your sentence?
My sentence was 32 months at 80%.
What does that mean?
So 32 months, I would have to do 32 months. Mm-hmm. So what is that, a year and a half? And
32 months would be, 24, 2 years and some change.
2 years.
It's not a
and
full
some change.
3 years, but
Okay.
you're close.
Right,
yeah.
right. 2 years and some change. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So what that meant was out of the 32 months I had to do because of the crime that I committed, I was going to have to serve 80% of that time.
Okay. Now, that's confusing to a lot of people. They get confused when they hear, okay, you get, let's say, a 3-year sentence, and a lot of people don't serve the full 3 years.
Right.
There are some detractors. I think they're ill-informed. They'll say, oh, our justice system isn't working. But really, there are ways that inmates can get more credit for time served. For example, there are things you can do where 1 day of incarceration will actually count as 2 days against your conviction.
Right.
What are some things that give you that sort of 2-for-1 credit when you're incarcerated?
Right, exactly. You know, when folks are incarcerated, whether in jail or prison, one of the main things they want to do is return home. They want to get back to their families.
Of course. Well, no one wants to be in prison. That's kind of the point.
Right. Nobody wants to be in prison. Right. And so they have numerous different programs that you can do. One of them is like education, get a high school degree, take college classes while incarcerated.
So if you take certain educational units, they'll say, all right, you served one full 24-hour day, but we're going to give you 48 hours. We're going to give you 2 days.
Exactly.
So in theory, you could cut your sentence in half if you're taking advantage of the programs the state offers you.
Right.
Well, that's a pretty strong incentive to do those things.
Definitely. And so you have a lot of people knocking at the door trying to get those opportunities. Another one is also working while incarcerated. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the type of work. There are many types of jobs that you can do while incarcerated within the facilities, but there are certain types of jobs, i.e. firefighting, that get you those 2-for-1 credits and help you closer to your date home.
There's clearly a strong incentive to get a job, but to get a job as an inmate firefighter, that is a big decision you're making. This is a little different than working in the mess hall or doing laundry or landscaping. This is going into the belly of the beast. So a lot of people might be hearing for the first time that, yes, inmates, prisoners, not a few, thousands of them fight wildfire every year. Personal experience of my own, I've been on fires where, I had a yellow helmet because I was a firefighter, and I'd be surrounded by orange helmets. I was outnumbered at a lot of fires. And that raises a couple interesting points. Point one, how many people choose to do this program? Because it's voluntary. Is that right?
Yes, it's voluntary. We are not forced into this work. We have to make our own personal decision to go hop into this line of work.
And if you decide that you want to do it, can anyone become an inmate firefighter? I mean, what's the barriers to entry there?
Right. There's a lot of barriers. First, you need to choose to do it. And we'll get to that point when we talk about how I landed into fire camp.
Yeah.
But one of the things is, right, firefighting de facto is considered a public servant, which is like a catch-22 when you're talking about incarcerated people. But basically some crimes are like you can't be in jail for murder or violent crimes, right?
Violent crimes are no good. So I want to be very clear on something. Are there any rapists or murderers given this opportunity?
No.
Hard no.
No.
Good to know. Now, what kind of crimes can you commit and still have this opportunity? Just off the top of your head.
Ironically, just to get back to your previous question, I wanted to know one more. They don't let arsonists into fire camp.
That's a good rule. I wonder who thought of that one.
Right.
All right. So sexually violent, murder, no good. What about like aggravated robbery? I think if you use a weapon to rob someone, you could still have the opportunity to be in the camps. Is that true?
Right. In that situation, it's a case by case.
Yeah, it'll be case by case, but overwhelmingly, certain serious crimes, violent crimes, arson for excellent reasons, not going to happen. So you need to have a certain kind of crime on your record to even have the opportunity to do it.
Right.
And then you have to actually say, I would like to do this.
Right.
When you went through it, how did the opportunity to become an inmate firefighter get presented to you?
Okay. I have to back up one step because I remember my mother asking me what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Really?
And the first thing I told her was, I do not want to be a firefighter.
That was the first thing you said.
That was the first thing I said.
That I want to point out the irony that for those who are listening and not saying, you're wearing your uniform. You are wearing your Class B uniform for the service you represent with the badge and the stars and everything. You said you did not want to be a firefighter.
Did not. When
my mom asked me that question, I said I did want to be a firefighter. I'm wearing a suit and tie. You're wearing a badge. The irony, the winding road our lives have taken.
Right.
I mean, we both have worn badges, just not anymore for me. But so your mom asked you, you said no.
Right. I had just watched the movie Backdraft, and it scared the crap out of me.
Really?
I was like, no, that's not the case. So fast forward, I got into a series of some trouble in my life. I got convicted of a crime, a drug-related crime. So they sent me to prison. And I was trying to get home. I was trying to get out of this spot. I was like, no, who wants to be here in the heat? Everybody knows that prison is not the most pleasurable place. And I'm not here to argue rightfully so or not. But so I remember sitting on my bed and I was trying to figure out what I could do to come home earlier.
What prison were you at?
I was at Delano.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Delano. I think they call it North Kern nowadays.
Very hot.
Very hot.
Do they have AC units in the cells?
No, not at all.
God, dang. So you're sitting there pretty uncomfortable. What thoughts were going through your head that day sitting on your bed when you were thinking of joining the camps? I mean,
well, one of the first things that came into my mind was like, how did I get myself in this situation? How did I get myself in this place? I was down and out. I didn't like the conditions.
Were you afraid at all when you were in prison?
I mean, there's initial jitters, right? Yeah. But once you understand how to navigate yourself in it, if you stay out of drama, 75% of the time it won't find you. Not always,
That's a concerning statistic that if you mind your business 3/4 of the time, you'll be okay.
Right. And you always got to keep your eyes open.
That is a very strong incentive, I would think, to look for ways out of that system.
Right.
Yeah.
So I tried to go to school. They said, well, hey, you already got your GED. You also went to college. So what kind of training can you have out here with us?
Did you have a college degree or did you just have units?
I had a college degree.
What was your degree in?
Liberal studies and African American studies. From the University of California. The University of California.
Really? So was that a bachelor's degree?
Yes.
So you had a bachelor's degree, you had everything. So education wasn't really going to be on the table.
Right. It wasn't. It wasn't. I had already went to Cal, and so I had maxed out most of my educational opportunities. And then, like you mentioned, the work opportunities, I wasn't negate to the opportunities, but one, there was a severe wait list for all the opportunities to work in the mess hall, to work in the kitchen.
What were some of the jobs you were looking at? Mess hall, kitchen. What were some others you liked?
I wanted to be like the administrator for the sergeant or the lieutenant or maybe the warden. I'm like, hey,
get in with the boss.
Right. Or like, hey, maybe I can help out the teacher with the GED classes. I was trying to finagle my way into any situation, but there were just no types of pathways. So I was low key stuck, and I'm like, man, like there is like nothing out for me, and I'm sitting here in this hot ass cell. And lo and behold, I get a knock on my cell door, and they call me. It's a woman counselor, and she calls me and she says, "Smith, come to the cell door." Mm-hmm. She slides open the thing. We talk through the window, and she says, "Hey, do you want to go to fire camp?" I said, "Wait, fire camp? What is fire camp?" She's like, "You're gonna go out here and go be a firefighter and fight these wildfires."
The exact
I'm
thing
like,
you said
hell
you didn't
no,
want to do.
No, thank you. No, ma'am. Sorry. I think back to Backdraft, the movie, and I'm like, no, I do not.
That's immediately flashbacks of De Niro getting blown up. You're like, hell no.
It was a hard no, like a non-negotiable in my life, like no. And so then when the woman left, everybody that was in my housing unit,
well, they all hear there's no privacy.
Right, there's no privacy there. So everybody had seen and heard what happened, and everybody knew that I had turned down fire camp, and everybody was like, Smith, bro, like, what's going on? Like, why did you turn that down? I'm like, I'm not trying to be no firefighter out here. What are you talking about? I'm not doing this. And then they started to talk to me about the benefits of fire camp.
Your neighbors, these are cells nearby.
My cellies.
So you're still alone in your cell, and just their voices are yelling at you.
Right. I have a cellie that's in the cell with me.
Okay.
2 persons in the cell. And then there's folks in the rest of the block. There's people upstairs from me. There's all kind of communication. And they're all
saying, dude, like, you're relatively newcomer here. We're telling you this is an opportunity that you want.
Right. You want out? This is going to be it.
Why do you think they had that opinion?
Oh, I'm going to tell you. Because they had to convince me. So they said, first things first, you'll get home quicker. I was like, all right, I'm already familiar with that. I'm just going to try to navigate a way to get home quicker. They're like, actually, if you go to fire camp, you'll get home a little bit more quicker.
Yeah. Is it 2 for 1 at the camps?
Yes, it's 2 for 1 at the camps.
Which we already talked about. Quick reminder, that's 2 days credit towards your time for every day in. That's a really good incentive.
Right.
Yeah.
And in most institutions, it's 1 for 1. At best.
Yeah.
But you work one day, you get 1 day off. But in my situation, you work one day, you get 2 days off. Mm-hmm. So it was like, it's
a fast track.
It's a fast track home.
But this is not a freebie. For anyone who's a hardliner, tough on crime, I want to be very clear. They're not just handing out like expedited sentences. This, as someone who did firefighting work myself, and Brandon's going to talk about it, this is hard.
Oh, I didn't know what I was getting into.
So you didn't know. You were about to find out. What happened next?
So then they started talking about, well, camp. When you go to camp, you can be closer to home. Keep in mind, I'm in North Kern, which I call Delano, Central California. Mm-hmm. I'm based out of LA, Altadena, near the Pasadena area. Yeah. I'm about 5-6 hours from my family. They've already told me, we love you, but you may see us once, twice a year. Like, don't expect us to come out. Like, we're not doing this. We're not those type of people. And I was like, okay. But they told me, and the people while I was incarcerated in the prisons told me, well, besides the work one day and get 2 days off, but you could be closer to home. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what do you mean you'll be closer to home? They were like, hey, they're going to send you to camp. So I was like, because at that point I didn't fully understand what camp was. And in that conversation, they put me on game about camp. And I can speak about that, or you can as well. But like, there were multiple camps. There's more camps than there are prisons in California.
Yeah, there's a pretty big network of them. So for those who don't know, when we're talking about camp, this is still a prison facility. He's not going canoeing and jet skiing. Like, that's not what this is. It is a conservation camp. Now, I believe these were actually founded in the 1940s. Brandon, check my history if I'm wrong. They were founded in the 1940s during World War II. Now, what was happening at the time is all the able-bodied young men, and it was almost always men, were going off to fight the war, which left a critical manpower shortage here in the United States for forestry. And so there was this great idea: what about inmates, prisoners who are otherwise able-bodied who can do some of this work? And that started the camp system, conservation camp system we have in California, which remains to this day as part of our Department of Corrections system. Now, what happens at these camps that Brandon's going to talk about some more, prisoners go here and learn how to be firefighters, but they aren't just learning how to throw a hose onto a hydrant and go running into burning buildings. No, they are also actively year over year doing prevention work. They're doing work to protect the health of our forests, trails. They'll maintain some of our park systems here in California. And then, yes, when there's a call for a fire, they go. And they don't just do fires either. They also do technical rescue. I remember in my career, we had one incident. It was a vehicle over a side, and an inmate crew was actually called to help us with hoisting that vehicle up. So they do a wide variety of tasks. So, Brandon, you arrive first day at the camp. What was that first day like?
How do I phrase it? I wanted out.
Did you feel like you made a mistake?
I wanted out. So the first thing that happened is when I said yes, they put me through the process, and the first thing that we went through was firefighter training, and that was done at the firefighter training facility.
So you get marched out and you're doing the training. What did the training consist of?
So the training consists of PT, physical training, making sure you're able-bodied to do the job. We could get into it eventually, but wildland firefighting in general, you have to do like very arduous duty. You got to be fit. You can't play games.
Yeah.
Then it went to the in-class firefighter training. So we had to go through all the trainings, right? The classes
teach you all the strategies, tactics, crew level, the commands, how to actually operate your tools.
Right.
What tools did they teach you how to use?
Chainsaws, Pulaskis, McLeods.
For those who don't know, a Pulaski, it's kind of like a fire axe, but instead of a spike at the end, it's almost got like a scoop. And it's kind of a primary weapon for firefighting. I ended up using a Pulaski more than almost anything else when I was on. I don't know about you. And that handle was never long enough. That handle's never long enough. My back hurt every time I used the damn Pulaski. That's interesting. These are sharp, dangerous tools. One might call them weapons. They trust you with these things.
I had a full-blown chainsaw in my hand. I was
a
chainsaw
full-blown
operator.
chainsaw.
I was a lead saw. I could go off on anybody. I can Texas Chainsaw Massacre anybody if I wanted to.
And they trust you with that responsibility.
Right. They definitely do. They definitely do.
Now, there's another thing that's interesting that happens in these camps is there's a hierarchy in that crew. So when you see a row of orange uniforms marching out to go fight a fire, they're not, I mean, they're equals in a civil rights context, but they're not all equals. There are some positions that are leadership positions.
Right.
What are the leadership positions on an inmate hand crew that a prisoner can have?
Right. The leadership positions could be, I forget the terminology they still use.
I know lead saw is one of them. Yeah.
So, the I would say one of the first primary one is being the lead or secondary saw person, and so chainsaws are utilized to cut through the brush, to cut through the forest, so that folks can dig and do their fuel break lines.
And if we imagine a line of not troops, but like your crew walking up to create fire line to defend against a fire that's advancing at you. So for those who don't know, when you're fighting a wildfire, you're not necessarily throwing a bunch of water at it.
Right.
That's not really practical. Instead, what do we have to do, Brandon?
We have to create fuel breaks.
You have to cut lines in the brush because dirt doesn't burn.
Right.
And at the front of that, the tip of your spear, that's your chainsaws. They're cutting down the heavy brush.
Right.
Who's behind the chainsaw?
So then you have your tools, which are the tool you like.
My favorite,
right? The
Pulaski.
Right, you have the Pulaskis that's digging up all the rocks and the dirt and the stubs, and then you have the McLeods, the scrapes that come in the end, and then they scrape and make sure it's aligned, and then you have the drag spoon, which is also a leadership position.
Drag spoon. That comes. They have a shovel, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's where the spoon comes from.
They're the one like quality control at the end. And so I like to liken the analogy, like if your front yard is on fire and it's really windy, like the first thing you're going to do is like, you want to put water on it, but thinking in the large context of a forest, you're gonna cut your lawn in half so that the fire doesn't go to the other side of the half. And so the chainsaw folks are the people with the lawnmowers who are cutting them, breaking them up. The Pulaskis and the scrapes,
digging up the roots and brush that's stuck in there.
That's still there. And then the McLeods and the scrapes are the ones like scraping up the leftover mush so that you have
the McLeod. For anyone who's listening, a McLeod tool, it's a long wooden stem and it's like a rake on one side and then a blade on the other. So you're raking up debris that might burn and then scraping it clean. That's a fun tool to have. I like the McLeod.
I like McLeods as well.
Yeah. All right. So that's the sort of structure of an inmate crew, but they are led by a captain.
Right.
And that captain is not an inmate. Who is that captain?
That captain is a captain with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, also known as CAL FIRE.
Whoop, whoop. CAL FIRE. What's up?
CAL FIRE. So these are non-incarcerated people that have moved their ways up to a captain position professionally, who have chosen to come work with the incarcerated folks that work as firefighters. So every crew of about 20 people, you have about 20 people in one crew, firefighters, incarcerated folks, and then there's one captain to that crew that supervises all 20. And that's the lead that takes us on all these fires and assignments and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Now that captain has a lot of power over your quality of life.
Oh my gosh. That captain can make your life great and can make it all bad.
You know what? It's like that for the non-incarcerated firefighters too. My quality of life depended greatly on how happy my captain was. But what was your relationship like with those captains?
It depends. With most of the captains I've had great relationships with. And then there were a few that were just straight up assholes, and the best relationship was like not even working with you at all. And so there were some captains where, I would step up and I would be the lead or secondary saw. And I would go out here and lead the crew and make sure that everything was good. And then there were some where I was like, all right, I'll just give me a hand tool because I don't even want to talk to you or deal with you. Yeah. And it just depends, because as an incarcerated person, there's already this feeling of a lower self-worth. And
like you're almost less of a person than
right, less than a person. And also, right, like this felon, this inmate, this criminal, this violation or detriment to society, right? And so like some people have used that against me and other folks, where it's like, shut the fuck up and do what I say, or when we get back, I'm sending your ass back to prison.
You always have this threat of losing the benefits of the inmate fire program. And it's not always like, some people think, oh, you shouldn't have broken the law. Oh, just do what you're told and it's going to be fine. It's not always a matter of, oh, you broke a policy, you did something bad, therefore we're going to send you back. A lot of times it can really depend on the mood swings of a particular officer or a CAL FIRE captain. Is that unfair? That's a tough one.
That's a tough one, right? Because it leads into a larger conversation about power dynamics, criminality, the criminal justice system, and all that. So, like, I would just say that there are assholes in any profession that you deal with, and especially in fire, regardless, they're there.
I thought you were going to say especially lawyers, and I was ready to nod really hard. But yeah, in fire, we got assholes in fire too. Yeah.
And then you have to realize that the work is highly stressful. It's physically, mentally, spiritually taxing. And so I don't put too much I don't harbor hatred, even though I've seen the one I don't like on fires and I don't talk to him. But the rest of them, we still talk and all that kind of stuff. But it is what it is.
It really is what it is, because you do need the hierarchy. It's one of those situations where in most positions, hierarchy isn't really that important. I mean, in my law office, yeah, I'm the boss and ultimately I make decisions, but we can have a democracy in my office and my staff are free to confront me with different ideas and things. But that changes a lot in the context of, hey, there's an 80-foot tall, mile-wide wall of fucking fire in front of us, and there's not really an escape route out. Right. So democracy kind of goes out the window.
Definitely.
And the hierarchy isn't important. And it's important because when everything is scary and going to hell and people are scared and your brainstem instincts are starting to kick in, you have to maintain order.
Right.
Because if the order dissolves, that's when people start dying.
Right. Definitely. And that's why in fire and all EMSs, federally all the way down, we have ICS, the Incident Command System, right? A hierarchy that's out there and it's generally led with the folks with the more trainings, the more years in service experience, right? Because understandably, if I've only been fighting fires for 6 months and I really didn't want to do this in the first place because I remember backdraft, right? And I see this 80-foot tall flame, going all over the place, right? My instincts can get me killed. This is dangerous work, right? And so I need to rely on a chain of command and have some form of order.
Yeah, cool. Because your instincts are going to tell you to run away.
Right.
Which is not cowardice. That is literally millions of years of evolution trying to keep you alive. It's doing its job. But what we've done is we've put ourselves in a position where we've decided as a species, like, hey, we're going to work together and we're going to try to control this force of nature. You mentioned seeing that 80-foot tall flame for the first time. Every firefighter has their first time. When you realize this isn't academy anymore. This is real. I remember my first time seeing a flame that was about 80 feet. It was a couple hills away. And I remember I felt it. I felt it before I saw it. It was hot and it was far. And I remember how hot it felt being that far. And then I remember we crested the hill and I saw how fast it was moving. And I remember hearing it. What was your first experience like? When you, all the training, and then you finally get out there and you saw it for the first time?
I'll start with saying one of the best lessons I learned in training and actually through experience is there is pretty much no way for you to outrun a fire, a forest fire, a wildfire. There's pretty much no way for you to outrun this thing.
But what if I'm in good shape and I'm really fast?
You're not going to outrun it.
Right. There's always that one guy. I could do it. Like, no, you can't.
No, even these folks are in Paris right now, right? Even the Olympians couldn't do it.
You're not outrunning that
You're not outrunning it. So I remember my first experience. It was a TC. It was a traffic collision, and so we were one of the first on scene. So we pulled out most of the origin or where the fire started was already put out. So one, it was kind of daunting because I literally saw like a body like burnt in a car, and it was like,
So your first time seeing something like that?
So that that was my first of many, as you know. So I'm already and riding up there. First we get the call and I'm already nervous. I'm like, God, please keep me alive. Please keep me alive. I have to get back. God, please, 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 please. So we get there, we see that. I'm already kind of disgusted. So luckily the first 2 hours of the work were kind of like everybody was assessing the fire. I wouldn't say we were mopping up, but we were kind of holding and improving. And then the night came and a wind shift came and the thing picked up. So they were like, let's go. We're about to do direct attack. And
okay, so quick thing. What is the difference between a hold and protect operation and a direct attack operation?
Okay, so a hold and protect is, all right, the actual flame is out, but there's still heat and embers around. Yeah. And this fire can still catch up.
All that ash is still popping and smoking, and a gust of wind, it can take off again.
Right.
So you're building a perimeter around it to keep it from spreading.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Whoever was there first just did something real quick to get that flame out. And now we came behind it to like make sure it's good.
And that's typically like a CAL FIRE engine crew running up a progressive hose line. Right. Just that's what I did. So my job initially was running up with that hose, and we're not doing a great job behind us. We're just trying to knock down the most of it and keep moving. And then you guys come in and do the really important work of bottling up that burnt out space.
Right, exactly.
Which is hard work, but a little less intense than the other thing you mentioned, direct attack.
Right.
And I want to be clear, inmate firefighters are firefighters.
Oh, yo,
They are
in the fullest
firefighters.
sense.
There's none of this like, oh, you guys do a
Facts.
little less than no. They do direct attack. What is direct attack?
All right, so direct attack is the flames are there at your face. It's like when you open up a grill and the flame is up and your face is there, or you turn on the stove and your eyebrows burn off or something. Like, you know, it's hot. It's this type of heat that it's like, am I sitting in an oven right now? Because, you know, we got on our protective gear and all that. It's like hot, and then the flames come and they're like, let's go. Like, ain't no time to be fucking around. And it's like, and you know, it hit adrenaline.
Yeah.
That first fire adrenaline, I was like, I'm in it now. I
Oh,
gotta
I've got
stay
goosebumps,
alive.
Brandon.
Like,
You're
woo,
giving me
let's
goosebumps,
go.
bro.
And we just going attacking it and attacking it and attacking it and attacking it and attacking it. And then what's so interesting is what's different than most lines of work is like, this ain't like, oh, let me go type this on this computer for 20 minutes and then go take a break outside. No, we doing this for 16 hours. You know what I mean?
Hustle, and it stays hustling. There's no breaks.
There's no breaks.
Because the minute you so let me be clear about what direct attack is for a lot of people. That means you are running right up along with the fire line and you are cutting brush that is burning.
Mm-hmm.
You are cutting down burning frickin' bushes. You are grabbing things that are on fire and throwing them into the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
The people with shovels behind you are scooping up shovelfuls of dirt and throwing it at the flames.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have water crews with you.
Right.
Most of the time you do not.
Right. It depends on the circumstance. I've been in both. Right?
I mean, you'll do both, but if you're in a direct attack, there's going to be a lot of situations where it's just you and your hand tools.
Right. It's just us and the hand tools and the chainsaw. And so we continue on with the work. And then the wind shifts again. So we hit a flank or whatever, and the wind shifts again. So it starts to grow in a more opposite northerly way. And so we like kind of when you do direct or both direct, indirect, and all that, you're following where the flame goes to try to catch it, right? You're trying to keep it in this box or circle per se. And so what happened was we ended up in a situation where we were like 3/4 of the way, like fires were 3/4 of the way around us. Wow. Some intense, some is not. And at that point, with the adrenaline in my body, it was then when I was like, oh, I definitely need to be conscious of my safety and not my safety, the safety of everybody else. Because you can be so much into the work that you lose track of what you're doing.
That happens to some people. They get tunnel visioned and you're just like, okay, I'm just cutting line. And then you look up and you realize we are surrounded.
Right.
This is not good.
And that's why you need those supervisors. That's why you need the incident command systems. That's why you need those leaders who have different slides and experience.
Well, that's why you'll see all the time the guys swinging and working, and you'll see a captain, you know, the post right here on their shovel. And yeah, it's like, oh boy, that sure looks easier. But if they're doing their job, they're watching and keeping everyone safe.
Right,
Having a lookout is so important. And some of the best crews I worked on, they didn't just have that. They'd say, hey, you're going to take this high point. Steiger, go hike up to that top of the hill. Let's get line of sight radio communication and everyone watch where this fire is going.
Exactly.
Brandon, you did a good job illustrating it. Can't emphasize enough how quickly the winds can shift and how quickly those fires move.
It's a dangerous situation for everybody.
And inmates choose this.
Right. They choose it.
Do they get paid?
Yes, they get paid. That was one of the benefits.
Do they get paid well?
Comparatively so, yes.
That's a nice way of saying no. So first of all, let's start with comparatively so. Is it true that is it the highest paying role a California inmate can get?
Yes.
It is. What is the pay?
Last I checked. Okay. So last I checked, folks were, okay. There's kind of categories, but I'll use while on fires.
Yeah. Well, there's a base and then there's an incident response rate.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
Okay. So I believe the base right now is like $5-6 a day.
$5 or $6 a day.
Right. Base rate.
$5 or $6 a day, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay.
When somebody told me that the other day, I was like, damn, y'all getting bread.
Well, that's a raise because I remember back in my day, I think it was $2.
I was making $2.
I think it was $2 when I was a firefighter. So, all right, cool. They got a raise to $5 or $6 a day. But then what happens when they're actually on assignment?
So when they're on incident, on fire, regardless, when they get called out for emergency response, regardless of what they do, they get paid an extra $1 an hour.
So they get their $5 a day plus $5 an hour. So the best you can possibly hope to make is just a hair below $30 a day.
Right.
For life-threatening, dangerous
$29, $30 a day. Right.
Risking your lives.
And that's do you know that's bread. That's chip with dip I use. For somebody that's incarcerated to make $30 a day.
Yeah.
Do you know, like, folks are still making $30 in a month. So you remember when I was talking about helping out with the GED or people working in the mess hall or in the cafeteria? These folks are making, like, now I think it's while I was incarcerated, they were making like 85 cents a day and maybe like 150 now.
Now, I can already hear the counter argument to this. What someone who may not know better might say, what the hell do you need money for anyway? You're in prison. They provide all your meals and your bedding. What the hell do you need money for?
Okay. I'm gonna respond like the public servant I am now. I'd say first and foremost, people who are in prison. Okay, people who are in prison have victims.
Mm-hmm.
And victims deserve restitution.
Mm-hmm.
And restitution being whatever monetary compensation I receive for you violating me, right?
Did you have to pay restitution?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yes.
What did that look like?
I had about $4,000 worth of restitution, but there's also court fees in there. You know, there's a lot of stuff that comes.
Yeah,
with
so
restitution.
the state does take a financial chunk out of the inmates' wages, depending on their crime, depending on what they're in for. So it's actually good for inmates. It's good for victims to have inmates being able to earn good wages because restitution gets paid faster that way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because so let's just say. Let's use the $30 a day comment. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't actually see the $30. I would see 15 of it.
Okay, so right off the top, we're seeing about 50%
right.
to restitution.
They take 50% off the top.
Okay, and then what else would you need money for?
Right. Okay. Then also though, I mean, it's very like ironic or catch-22, but you still got to live while you're in prison. Mm-hmm. One of the things is, I mean, prison is prison. I'm not here to justify that either way. Though I will say that the living conditions there in totality are not the best for you to survive. If you want to survive in a better way while incarcerated or live, you need money. So one of that is in commissary food, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't like the food that they serving, mm-hmm. or you know that it's not whatever, right? Like monthly going to the store and getting some noodles or a bag of chips, or folks were buying envelopes and stamps to write their families. Folks use that money at the time. Global Tel-Link was charging incarcerated people to use the phone.
That's another thing that a lot of people don't realize is it's just a phone call home at the wages you're making. You could work a month to be able to talk to your mother on the phone. Facts. And again, you know, there's the counterpoint. People say, and I got to be honest, Brandon, I don't fuck with people like this. If this is your attitude, I don't think we can be friends. But there's a lot of people who say, oh, boo-hoo, you committed a crime. You deserve to have a hard life. Maybe that's true for some crimes. It depends. It really depends. Right. Maybe that's true. But if our goal is rehabilitation, if our goal is to make sure people don't reoffend, or when they're done, they're able to contribute to society in a meaningful way, we don't want to put them in a position where they're subjected to years of physical and mental agony with nothing to show for that time. Because then what happens is we just create a very wounded, angry, bitter person. And then we release them and we expect them to just get a job and be normal after that. That's a tough ask.
Yeah, it's crazy.
For even a very mentally strong person.
It's very crazy.
Now, yeah, I mean, the camps, they're hard and they're scary
and dangerous.
Brandon, I'm going to ask point blank. Has an inmate ever died fighting fire?
Oh, multiple have. It's happened numerous times. And I don't want to compare it to the people that do it professionally. I will say though that the margin for injury, error, and death is higher for incarcerated people than it is for folks working professionally.
I can think of a few reasons why that might be. Why do you think that inmates are getting injured at a higher rate than non-incarcerated firefighters?
It goes back to this supervision conversation, right? Like, who is your captain? Who are your leaders? What is your relationship with them? It goes into one of the interesting things about fire camp is the lack of continuality, for lack of a better term. So like when you hopped on your engine, you knew you were in your engine for the season.
Yeah.
They trained you. You were with that group of people.
And I want to quickly point out that before I stepped on a CAL FIRE engine for the very first time, I had been through at least 24 weeks of academy intensive training at various academies, plus a year of volunteer fire in a Schedule A station, which was much lower stakes. So before I set foot on that CAL FIRE engine, I had a lot of training.
Right.
Which was a privilege. Yeah.
Right. So it goes to that. And so one of the things when it comes to incarcerated people, one of the things is everybody goes home. Everybody doesn't enter and leave at the same time. I'm talking about institutionalized, being in prison. Everybody got their own release dates.
Yeah.
And so, we got a group of 20, but some 2 or 3 of them are going home every month.
People are filtering in and out. So you don't have that kind of unit cohesion you're looking for.
We're always training somebody new.
Yeah, the guy who had your back 3 weeks ago at a big scary fire, and you can trust him under pressure, and like what your methods are going to be when your back's against the wall. Well, now that guy's gone, so he got released, and we got someone green who's untested. And they've never even seen a fire front yet. And now you're like, wow, the guy who I knew had my back, I got to start all over with this new person. And there's nothing against it. They could be perfectly great firefighters, but your first time is going to be scary and weird, and you don't know what you're doing.
Right. You got to build that trust. And you're 100% right on the training aspect, how you mentioned you did 24 weeks in classrooms and in academies, and then the 1 year at the volunteer.
I think I went through 4 different academies. There was the Firefighter 1 Academy, which is the bulk of it, and then there was your 72-hour academy, and then there was the Wildland Academy, and then I went through a state volunteer academy.
Gotcha.
So I was just
you were on.
Well, by the time I was there, it's still just the same as you that first time, and you smell the smoke and you feel the heat and you realize, oh, we're not playing anymore. This is real. It's a little scary. But at that point, I had the privilege of receiving so much training that I didn't even have to think.
Right.
So
for us, also one of the things that's a challenge is the training piece. While we do receive certifications and all that, like at most, folks receive like a 2-month like crash course on wildfires and tools. So, and it's really 1 month because half the time is making sure you're physically fit. The other half the time is making sure you learn your 10s and 18s, the basic standard firefighting.
Yeah, quick thing. What are the 10s and 18s?
Standard firefighting orders and watchouts, right? And so the 10s and 18s are like the basis of all wildland firefighter trainings, regardless of incarceration or not.
So in the absence of orders, you have 10 standard orders that every firefighter memorizes, which is great because if you have a breakdown in communication or a breakdown in command, which happened to me at a fire once, we had a complete disconnect with our battalion and we had no communication from up top. So we straight up reverted to the 10 standard firefighting orders. And then there's the 18 watch out situations. Those are all situations where you have to say, uh-oh, this is dangerous.
Right.
And I remember in academy, one of the watch outs that always makes people laugh, taking a nap near the fire line. Yeah, you knew where I was going to go. When you're in the classroom, you go, who the hell is taking a nap near an active fire line? Then you get out there and you go, oh, everyone's taking naps because you've been out here a long time and you're not going home for a long time.
Right.
And eventually biology kicks in. You got to sleep, bro. But you put out watch outs and,
Right. And side note about that and sleeping under a vehicle, even though it's not a 18. But one thing is the 18s came from situations where people died and taking a nap on the fire line. I done seen so many packs and PPE burned up from people just taking a nap, like, oh, I just want to be warm. And so they sleep on the fire line and then they wake up all burnt up. But we only get 2 months of in-class training and then we thrown out there. The majority of experience we get is lived experience by doing it. We learn more by doing it whereas you have more time in class. And so this
Yeah.
whole problem of fatalities, which is a problem in the whole firefighting world that we all try to mitigate, you know, there are some aspects why I think the margin is higher for incarcerated people doing the work.
So yeah, they have less benefit of the training. Well, they have less time too. I mean, the state, they want active, useful firefighting crews almost on day one. So you just don't have the luxury of time that a non-incarcerated firefighter has to really marinate that individual and get them to a point where it's always going to be dangerous, but we've mitigated that danger as much as we can through training. It's a little expedited with those crews. What is the general opinion of inmate firefighters of the program? Because there's a huge discussion about whether this is exploitation. Is this basically slave labor? You're offering people prison and all the fear and uncertainty and time, or get out a lot faster, but you have to do something really scary. I mean, what good, bad, exploitive, beneficial, something in between? What do the actual inmates think about this program when they're in it?
Well, at first, I'll talk about my personal self, and I do, you know, in the work that I do, I've came across many incarcerated folks that worked as firefighters. But I'll say, for me, my reasoning for coming to camp and doing the work changed the more and more I was there.
Really?
So what's very interesting is I consider myself like a city person, right? Grew up in LA County, urban area, you know, even though the mountains are in my backyard in Altadena, I had camping and all that stuff is not for me. And so one of the things that was interesting was just like, and especially coming straight from a prison cell, was like, man, like I'm in the forest. It's so fresh. There's not smog.
There's
right?
some people, I read a book by an inmate firefighter. It was self-published. I'm glad he published it. But he said it was his first time he'd really seen trees. He grew up in an urban environment, grew up poor, drugs. I mean, most of his life was warehouses and back alleys. And for the first time, he smelled grass. It's wild to think that there's some people where their first time really in nature is at those camps.
Yeah, it's at those camps. And you know, when you sleep at night in like complete darkness, right? Like that's the first time. I mean, I think I've learned the term now. They call it light pollution or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, and like when I took my wife and my kids camping, or they don't like it in the cabins, but you know, it's like completely dark at night. You know what I'm trying to say? Like all you got is the moon. And so there was that aspect that I liked. I grew to love the job and the career. Let me backtrack. I remember, because you were talking about the person that self-published their book. I remember we got an assignment in the Sequoia National Forest, and I got to see one of the big trees. I forget what it's called, General something or whatever.
Oh, I know. It's that old Sequoia tree, General. Oh, I know.
And it has like the burn scar.
I know what you're talking about.
Right.
It's one of the oldest and tallest trees in the world.
Right. I was so amazed. I was like, I didn't know trees could get this big or whatever. It's like a freaking dinosaur.
Yeah.
So So I grew to love the career. And then also why I grew to love the career was actually self-serving and selfish, but rightfully so. I had been living this life for, let's say, some years, living in the justice system, back and forth, jail, all this kind of stuff, courts, probation, all this kind of stuff. And, you know, having this thought process in my head that, you know, I'm a public nuisance, I'm a danger to society.
Sounds like you had a lot of negative
perceptions of myself. Yeah. And it's very interesting because we talk about the first fire I was on that was a traffic incident and we almost got trapped or whatever.
Yeah.
It was actually in the city of Idlewild in Southern California.
Oh, Idlewild. I know it well.
I love Idlewild. And I remember coming down the hill on the freeway and like all these kids and their families held out these flags and they were like, "Thank you, firefighters." And they was waving and waving. I'm like, who they waving at? And my other crew member was like, they waving at you, fool. Like, what you talking about? Like, wait, what you mean they waving at me? He's like, they thanking you. Do you realize what we just did?
You just saved their homes.
We just saved their town, right? Their schools. Like, I was like, oh, wow, bro. Like, we really did. And that piece of validation was so transformational for me. It was like, you know, like maybe I'm not a public nuisance. Maybe I'm not the sum of my worst decisions in life. Like, there is a possibility where I can go out here and serve people and like they appreciate it regardless of my background. And that drew me deeper and deeper into this whole firefighting career.
That was your moment up in Idlewild where the mentality shift, where you went from I'm bad, I'm a nuisance, I'm going nowhere, to, wait a minute, I can be a leader in my community. I can stand up and protect people. I can do work that directly benefits people. And even if I've made mistakes, and even if I'm not the best guy all the time, there are times when I can really be a good guy. And that changed for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It drove me further. It drove me further I became a student of fire while incarcerated. I started going into whatever kind of, wherever they call it a library, but a little room where they hold books, or I would talk to the fire captains. I would be like, can I get any information? Can you print something out and give it to me? I want to learn about the parts of the chainsaw. I want to learn about different types of vegetation and trees and how they burn and all this kind of stuff. Like, and they started like, wait, like what? And so like I started to get really, really, really deep in this. And I remember some folks asking like, bro, why is this so serious for you? Like, you're going to be home in like a year and some months. It's like, but like, damn, like this is cool.
It gave you a tidal shift on the inside that nothing has given you before. In a weird way, it's almost like how some people discover religion.
Right. Right. I became like, oh, people, please don't get mad at me. But I became like a fanatic of fire, you know.
There's two kinds of fire fanatics. There's arsonists and firefighters. Right. And to be clear, you're one of the good ones.
Right. Thank you for that clearing up. But yeah, you know, I got really, really into it to where even on my quote unquote like time off, or like basically when it was child time or to go to sleep or like resting before sleep, you know, I would work out more. I would read books. I would talk to folks. I would make sure my tool was as sharp as it could be. Like I was ready for the next get down.
Those quiet moments in the station, just sharpening your axe. I miss it, dude. I do. Well, we're going to run out of time soon, but I want to make sure we talk about something really important. When you got out, you had all of this training on how to fight fires, and it transformed you as a person, it sounds like. I mean, that's the goal of rehabilitation, I guess, is to show you that you can be a better version of yourself than you thought you could be. But can you just get a job as a firefighter, even with all that experience? You've got a felony conviction on your record. What happens?
So it's so interesting when we talk about my story, and thank you for that question. One of the things I always say is firefighters are like the ultimate superheroes of the world, right? Like nobody trips on firefighters. They may trip on police officers. They may trip on paramedics or doctors. Or
I got
even
yelled
the
at in
military.
grocery stores a couple times.
Oh,
Not everyone likes firefighters.
Well, I would say more than most, right?
Yeah.
Firefighters are the people that get the cat out the tree and help out Granny and all that kind of stuff. Like they're like,
no one wrote a hip hop song called "Fuck the Fire Department."
right? Exactly.
We got it. Yeah.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And so that compared to being incarcerated, a whole 180 shift, right? Being a public nuisance to a 180
It's
shift.
the
of being,
two different ends of the spectrum of sort of our social hierarchy. And at the very bottom of it is the incarcerated person, and kind of at the top is the firefighter.
right.
So as an inmate firefighter, it sounds like you're saying you exist in both of these planes simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
That's got to be hard.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'll continue with my story because it's very similar to the experiences that a lot of people faced and still do face. So I'm now a fanatic in this, and I'm like really, really into this. I get to be like one of the top couple of people at camp.
Nice.
Right. Like I'm in this.
You're in a leadership role.
Right.
But for the first time in years. I'm sure.
In years, definitely. And so I remember asking one of the officers and one of the fire chiefs were just leaving a meeting, and I pulled them to the side and I was like, hey, I just want you to know that like I really, really like this. Like this is really, really cool to me. Like, can I do this when I come home? And they was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? And they're like, you could try. And I like, do you have any resources for me? And they were like, good luck. I mean, I don't have nothing for you.
The resource didn't exist.
A resource did not exist.
Well, let's be clear about a couple of things. The general rule is no. The general rule is you're probably not going to get a job with a fire department if you have a felony conviction. That's the general rule. There are exceptions.
Right.
One of them, one of my captains was a formerly incarcerated person, and she was fantastic. She was kind of a legend in the department, which was well earned. She was just known as being cool-headed and competent and fair and just good. You know, you may know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to out her, but you know, it does happen, but it's hard.
That's a good point because, okay. Oh, I guess so many things I want to get to. But what's very interesting though is once I hopped into the space professionally, I found that there were a lot more people like me. But one of the things is like you just mentioned, people outing themselves. It was such like a taboo piece that like a lot of people weren't talking about that they were formerly incarcerated. So to formerly incarcerated people, when I came home, the answer was no, because I had a felony record. I remember I used to come home. I had to just get a job real quick, just or whatever. But like on my off days, I would go to fire stations. I would just fill out applications. I made some phone calls to HR departments. They're like, "What are you talking about, sir? Like, you are not experienced. This experience don't count. Those certifications don't mean nothing."
You have actual hands-on firefighting experience,
right? I have actual experience and
they're saying it doesn't count.
Right, and some certifications. And those certifications aren't valid because I gained them while I was incarcerated.
Brandon, my first time fighting an actual, well, technically it was in the volunteers, but my first time actually fighting a true wildfire was when I was hired by CAL FIRE. I had no business being chosen over someone who had years of direct fire line experience, but the difference was I didn't have a felony conviction.
Right.
I mean, sure, there's moral reasons, depending on your morality. But what about practical reasons? Don't we want the most experienced person for the job taking that job?
Especially when we have a shortage. I believe now in California, still there's a shortage of like 3,000 to 5,000 firefighters right now. We're short firefighters.
Yeah, it's well, our fire environment is one of the most intense in the world. I think Australia is a close second, depending on how you measure it. You know, acreage burned, fatalities, whatever it is. But this is the big show. So you had trouble getting in. How did you ultimately end up where you are now? Right.
So I'm knocking on all these fire stations' doors and I keep getting denied. Another thing is people coming home, they have to deal with supervision, probation, parole officers. So one of the first things I instantly told my parole officer was like, hey, I want to do this work. You know, being a fire requires you to be out and about in all kind of days and nights and times. And when you're on supervision, parole and probation officers ain't having that. And fire departments are not about to go have no parole officer come check in on you at their fire station.
Yeah, we don't even like when they come in to take a crap in our bathroom, let alone to come check on one of our guys.
Right, you know? right. So there's all of these barriers that were there. And at the same time, one of my best friends, my brother Royal Ramey, we were at the same camp together. He had the same drive.
I think I met Royal a few years ago.
I'm sorry?
I think I met Royal.
I'm pretty sure you have.
I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah. Well, anyway, so you
so we're pretty much down and out, and I'm like, man, I really don't think this is possible. I've exhausted all opportunities. And he's like, look, I think I got one more shot. So what we ended up doing was we went to a local community college and we took the same Wildland Fire Academy that you took.
Yeah, it was the 72 hour or the 96 hour. I think I screwed up. They changed it.
Right.
But yeah, it's that like 96 hour academy.
Right, it's like 96 hours.
Or maybe it was a 64 hour. Anyway, it was a certain number of hour academy.
Right.
You took it.
Right. We took it.
Yeah.
And when we took it, we didn't say anything about our previous job histories. Right. We just took it. But what was interesting is while we were in the class, he and I graduated literally at the top of our classes.
You were the most experienced.
Because and we answering all the questions and all that. Come here. What's going on back here? Like, why are you in this and y'all already been doing this work? We know y'all doing this work. Yeah. So then we had to tell the chief that like our story. And the chief was like, well, y'all continue to keep this up. I may have an opportunity for you. So then we graduated top of the class.
Nice.
And so I remember once the graduation was over, the chief was leaving and I was like, Chief, remember you said that there was this opportunity? And she was like, yeah. So she invited me and Royal to go work as what they call an on-call firefighter.
Nice.
Right. And actually, and I'm not going to out the chief either in my situation, but I will say shout out to Black women. She was a Black woman who gave us a chance. And so we went to the training for the on-call firefighters. Now we do that. So now here's the thing. Now we have the actual certifications. Even though I've been through all these classes while incarcerated, now I actually have them from a junior, from a community college, and I have them from a fire department, right? So now I have the certifications. Now when you're on an on-call fire department, on-call firefighter, what happens is in the worst of emergencies when they're short, they call you and say, hey, can you come over here and help out?
Some people call them reserve firefighters.
Right, reserve firefighters.
Exactly.
There we go. That's the better word, reserve firefighters. And so we were reserve firefighters for a couple of months.
And you're racking up that experience on the resume.
Right.
Yeah.
The actual experience that I can use. So halfway through that, I put in a job application, and so does he. And we don't mention anything about us being incarcerated. We just say, hey, similar resumes. We just graduated from this academy, first of our class. We just went out here and have all this 2 months experience as reserve firefighters. We have professional references from the chief and our captains.
Nice.
And guess what? They started giving us job offers.
Boom.
Boom. We on.
And now you've started a program that helps other formerly incarcerated, released people do just that.
Right. Interesting. It's so crazy, these firsts. So we get on, and what's interesting, so we get on, we accept both of our jobs. I'm in Northern California. He's in Southern California. We go through the background check process, and we're extremely nervous. We're extremely nervous. And it took some time for HR to kind of navigate. Like, we had to bring stacks of paperwork to show what it was, but it was the federal government. And the federal government, for some reason, is a little bit more forgiving than a state and a county and a city level. So anyway, it went clear. Then we were on our first fire, right? So we're on our first fire, both Royal and myself.
Well, not your first, but your first.
First one professionally. Excuse me. My first one as a professional firefighter, and we are out here doing this work, and then all of a sudden, I hear somebody call Royal's name, Royal, and then I hear somebody's name, Smith, and I'm like, bro, and it's loud, so it's kind of hard, and we look. Similar to your experience as a professional, and we see the incarcerated firefighters in orange.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, what up? And then I double look, and it ends up being the same fire camp and crews that we were both on while incarcerated.
And you were there, what, were you Forest Service at that point?
Yes,
So
with the
you were
Forest
in the
Service.
green?
I was in greens.
How did it feel?
It was so crazy.
Feel like a knight in shining armor, don't you?
Oh my gosh. It was like, for me personally, it was like, it was a reminder of where I came from and like an accomplishment. And so that filled me up with pride, but it immediately brought me back to reality again, because I actually knew some of those folks. They were proud of us. They were still incarcerated.
You must have looked like a damn superhero.
Right. And I knew some of the captains.
Because you showed them that it could happen. You were like this pioneer to them. Like, holy shit, that is Brandon. He's wearing greens.
So we talked to them during the lunch break. Yeah. We talked to them at chow, at dinner. The correctional officers that see us give us a hug and a handshake for the first time. It's so crazy. So then Royal and I, we're talking afterwards, and the conversations we have with them, we tell them how we do it. Go to this school, go do this, don't say nothing about this, talk to this person, call me when you get out, meet me at the Starbucks, I'll help you to go navigate your whole way. And so we started doing that. And then Royal and I realized, like, if we did it and we didn't know how, we know so many other people that are still incarcerated that would dream to do this work if they had the opportunity. Yeah. So we decided to create FFRP. And so FFRP, the Forestry and Fire Recruitment Program, was birthed out of our lived experience in fire camp, transitioning professionally into firefighters. And what I like to say is, we at FFRP, Royal and myself, we navigated the maze, or we navigated through the wilderness. We created a maze, or not a maze, but like a trail, a pathway.
You cut the trail to show other people how to get from being incarcerated to actually working in the fire service. And now, as you sit here today, how many people have you successfully helped transition at this point?
We started it in 2018. Today, we're over 250 people. that we've
Fantastic.
successfully trained.
Well done, man.
Thank you. And transitioning to work with the Forest Service, with the federal government,
Yeah.
the CAL FIRE, local counties, all that kind of stuff. And so it's been truly a blessing. I actually, the work was so successful, I actually decided to transition into the office work now.
Yeah.
Right. That's why my Class Bs are so crispy.
It's a
right?
sad day when it happens, but it's necessary. That's how we pass the torch of leadership.
Right. And what we're just trying to show is that your past is not the sum of who you are. And we go out now to all these fire camps. There are still 35 fire camps and training centers throughout the state. And so we go to each one and we say, hey, we were formerly incarcerated just like you. I had on them oranges, bro.
Yeah.
I was the first saw, bro. I know what it is to have those mean captains. And hey, you all can do this. We go to these camps and we say, hey, how many of you all want to continue this work once home? Out of 100 people, 80 of them raise their hand.
Yeah.
And so we start sending them information before they come home. They come home. We have our career training programs. We have 4 locations now. We have a San Bernardino location, Los Angeles, Malibu/Ventura, and the San Francisco Bay Area.
I'll have to visit you at the Malibu location.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, there we go.
It's really nice over there.
Brandon, we're out of time, which sucks because I want to talk to you more. We'll definitely have you on the show again. But for now, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate what you are doing for the people of California, for the people who are seeking a better life for themselves, what you're doing for our criminal justice system, what you're doing for our communities. What you do is so important, and I'm really honored to be your friend. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
And where can people find more of you? Where are you on social media? How can they learn more about you?
So our website is forestryfirerp.org. That's forestryfirerp.org. On social media, we're on Instagram. I think it's FFRP_CA. We're on LinkedIn. We got a Facebook. If you search FFRP or fire and incarceration, you're going to find us. And we're here to help anybody who's open and willing.
Right on. Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then it go off.